Hello everyone and welcome back. Who has a procrastination problem? I certainly have, and if you do too, don't feel bad about yourself because procrastination is so relatable and universal. In this video, we're gonna dig into everything about procrastination that you need to know. I will show you some of the explanations of why we procrastinate from the perspective of neurobiology and also psychology. And in addition to that, I will offer you some actionable tips for you to overcome procrastination if you're suffering from it. So let's get right into it. Did you know that procrastination manifests itself in many different ways? And now let's see which one or ones sounds relatable to you. First, we have the perfectionist procrastinator who doesn't start the task because of a fear of failure. So for perfectionists, failure equates to not getting every detail right. So they're always heavily criticizing their work and setting the bars extremely high for themselves. So this mentality becomes overwhelming that they never actually get around to starting anything. Then there comes the plenty of time procrastinators. They push back work until the last minute, especially when knowing the deadline is a long way out or there's no deadline at all. So this type resonated with me back at college, where I usually waited until the few days before the deadline to kick off my project. I have plenty of time to get it done. Next up is the fun-seeker procrastinators, who are willing to do anything other than that dreaded project. So typically, the project at hand seems boring, complicated, daunting, and also takes lots of effort to manage. So isn't it more fun to watch a few episodes of Netflix or play a video game first? But the thing is, in fun-seeker procrastinators' minds, they usually still think about the project while they play. They ended up feeling guilty and not enjoying their time at all. The very last type is the constructive procrastinator. And yes, procrastination can sometimes be beneficial, and psychologists label this type as constructive or structured procrastination. So we'll talk more on this later in this video. And in short, constructive procrastinators are not doing the task they are supposed to, but they're doing other tasks. So for example, instead of working on your coding project right away, you may reply to some emails first. This is considered constructive because you're not wasting your time binge watching Netflix, but you're doing something else you need to get done anyway. So again, we will dig into this later. So the negative impacts of procrastination actually shows up in almost every aspect of our lives. But to me, these aren't the most detrimental parts. So what's even worse is the stress that comes with it when I procrastinate. And yes, it feels good to scrolling through Instagram posts than it is to spend time working on my project. But that's only for a minute, because later on, I would have to pay for my procrastination. I feel guilty and also stressed while rushing to get things done at the very last minute. And gradually, I kind of lose my self-worth, and even I couldn't present myself confidently in front of other people. And these are the real reasons that I decided to not slip down the rabbit hole of procrastination. Now, first thing first, let's look at the reasons why we procrastinate. Because if we understand how something works, we can always make it work better, right? I used to think of procrastination as a sign of me being lazy or I'm just not self-disciplined enough. But no, it has nothing to do with laziness or time management skills. So if you think the same way, please eliminate these tags and stop your own self-sabotaging talk. In fact, neurobiology studies have shown that procrastination is a human nature and it's a part of human evolution. So basically, our brain is hardwired for it. It's not about productivity, it's all about our struggle between short-term rewards and long-term goal, which boils down to the two parts of our brains that are conflicting with each other. One is associated with our emotions, amygdala, and the other is associated with our abstract reasoning, aka precortex. Neuroscientists find that emotional parts of our brain respond positively to immediate rewards. And like if we are given a choice of a donut and a broccoli, and this part will likely push us to choose the donut. And by the same token, between working on the project and checking out Instagram feeds, our emotional brain will lean towards Instagram feeds because it makes us feel happy right away. The logical part, though, tries to reason with you. So it may tell you that you don't need to eat that donut, or that broccoli is better for your health in the long run. Or we need to get that project done because otherwise it would hurt our year-end performance review. So which part of our brain wins in the end? You know how to answer this question, right? It depends. Well, I feel like my emotional part usually wins over my logical part because it stimulates instant gratification. Another reason why the emotional part often takes over is that it also interacts with our dopaminergic systems to regulate the release of a neurotransmitter dopamine. I believe you must have heard about it. So dopamine is a chemical produced by our brain. It helps establish the neurological pathways that are responsible for survival and reproduction. So dopamine is known as the feel-good hormone, which gives us a sense of happiness. So if we do or see something good, we will get a little hit of dopamine. Our brain likes this, and we will be more likely to keep doing whatever it is that releases the dopamine. From an evolutionary standpoint, this dopamine chemical reaction is in our interest. So for example, imagine that you are starving now, and when you eat, it will stimulate the release of dopamine, which makes you feel good instantly. As a result, this will make you desire to experience the activity of eating again and again. Then it helps you stay alive and not die. So as we can see, being procrastinating is actually a matter of emotion or instant gratification, which serves evolutionary purposes throughout human history. And knowing this biological mechanism of procrastination, in order to overcome it, the first thing you should do is to forgive yourself for being procrastinating because, hey, our brain is hardwired for it, right? That being said, neurobiologists and psychologists still give us some tips to overcome procrastination if you are suffering from it. Tip number 1, the 5 seconds rule. Since procrastination is a result of a battle between our emotional and logical parts of the brain, so most often this battle will cause a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. This term was developed by social psychologist Leon Festingers in 1950s. It refers to the discomfort occurs when our behaviors and beliefs or values are inconsistent. Say, we believe that we should work on that coding project, and this is what the logical part of our brain tells us to do. But we don't really feel like doing it. Our emotional part of the brain wants to watch cat videos because it's more convenient. Then to reduce this discomfort, we come up with a list of good excuses to rationalize giving in to our cravings.
Like, it's okay, I will start tomorrow. I'm too tired to work on this project right now, and I don't feel motivated enough to start.
So we procrastinate trying to relieve this cognitive dissonance. Now, what does this insight tell us about how to overcome procrastination, right? And here is the 5 seconds rule, where we trick our brain by distracting the logical part from making up excuses. The rule is simple. The moment you have an instinct to act on a goal, you have 5 seconds before your brain talks you out of it. So start counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and as soon as you hit 1, push yourself to act. It's just simple as that. An extension of this 5 seconds rule is the 1 minute rule. So if a task can be done in a minute, don't put it off, don't wait, do it immediately. So for example, washing your mug right away after finishing drinking your water, and this way you won't pile 10 dishes in your sink. These brain hacks work because we don't give our logical brain any opportunity to overanalyze, so it won't sabotage our intentions or motivations to get things done. Next tip, let's talk about motivation. So oftentimes we hear people say they procrastinate because they don't feel motivated. And you feel like once the procrastination bug hits, anything is more interesting than your project at hand. Like we talked about earlier, dopamine plays a key role in motivations, and it is important in terms of human evolution.
However, our lives now is no longer about only basic biological goals like survival or reproduction. Instead, our lives have gotten much more complex and are packed with various stimulus.
Multi-million companies have capitalized on stimulating our dopamine reaction, like they make video games, create apps like Instagram, TikTok to give us that tiny dosage of dopamine here and there consistently. Our brain likes this sort of instant gratification because it functions as an immediate mood repair. So you will be more likely to keep doing whatever that releases dopamine, like checking out your Instagram feeds. But here you are rewarded for procrastinating. In other words, you are rewarded for not working on the project you are supposed to. This feeling good effect caused by tiny amounts of dopamine doesn't last long. Even worse, with this consistent stimuli each and every single day, our bodies tend to overload it with easy access dopamine. Then we are less sensitive to the healthy amount of dopamine that comes with really accomplishing our true desires, like finishing up that coding project. And here is where we started to feel less motivated and less happy. Do you feel related to that? Now, to overcome this instinct response, I have 2 tips to rewire your brain. So the first one is to envision the future by imagining how wonderful the sense of fulfillment you will feel after you finish the project in time. So here we are treating small dopamine surges for a bigger, better offer at the very end. So for example, when I don't feel like getting on that treadmill, I always think about how wonderful I would feel after my workout. You know, that mood-boosting effect from working out. Another tip is to have a little dopamine detox by making this small stimuli less accessible. So for example, when I need to focus on my project, I usually put my phone in another room or anywhere without my immediate reach. To me, we procrastinate is never due to lack of motivation. So think about it.
Whether we choose to lay down and watch Netflix or we choose to sit in front of the laptop and get the work done, we are motivated to do one of them.
So in order to defeat procrastination, we just need to direct our motivation, aka to direct the release of dopamine to the things that add true values. If you have made thus far, you probably have realized that throughout this video, all we have talked about is anti-procrastination tips to resolve the conflict between our emotional brain and our logical brain. So the very last tip I have for you is to turn the disruptive procrastination into constructive procrastination. Remember at the beginning of this video, we said that procrastination could be beneficial in the form of constructive procrastination or structured procrastination.
I know that it sounds paradoxical, but really, this kind of procrastination makes you more productive by actually turning your weak list into a strength.
Here is how it works. We have this very important task, say the coding project that we really need to get down. But we have that familiar feeling of resistance, like, nope, I don't want to do it. I would rather do anything but that coding project. Then at that moment, do this. So put the coding project on hold and give into your inclination to procrastinate. And meanwhile, don't go on a Netflix spree, but instead pull up your to-do list or procrastination list. So I'm sure we always have a number of tasks that we should get down at some point. And now pick a different task from that list that needs your attention. For example, things that I've found helpful is replying to emails that have been sitting in my inbox for 2 weeks, or finishing up coding another project that I've already started, or putting together some PowerPoint slides for my next presentation, etc. When I go through my procrastination list, more often than not, I will run into these 2 situations. So first, I naturally get into the flow After 1 or 2 items on my list, I just start working on my coding project. Or I run into tasks on my list that I hate to do, even more so than my coding project. So this makes my coding project less overwhelming and less horrifying. And again, I find myself naturally choosing to do the coding project over other things at that time. This concept of constructive procrastination was proposed by the philosophy professor John Perry at the Stanford University. So I will link his original article down below if you're interested in reading through. In a nutshell, this idea actually goes with the battle between our emotional and logical brains, as compared to other tips trying to reduce this conflict. Basically, it acknowledges and respects the fact that, okay, there is this tension, this resistance going on, and that's fine. Noticing here, we're not indulging in self-sabotaging talk like,
I wish I wasn't such a procrastinator, I'm just a loser.
And also here, we're not doing absolutely nothing. So we're still doing some other important to-dos that have been putting off. I think turning disruptive procrastination to constructive procrastination can be a nuclear option of sorts when all other previous tips fail. I hope you've learned the neurobiological and psychological mechanisms underlying procrastination, and also various science-backed ways to rewire your brain to overcome procrastination. Please stop self-sabotaging talk, and next time when you find yourself procrastinating, or you are watching this video because you are procrastinating, give these tips a try, and I'm sure some of them will be helpful. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you pretty soon in my next video. Bye guys!